It was a hot afternoon in Enugu, and the air smelled of dust and roasted groundnuts. 19-year-old Ifeananya had just finished her errands when Obinna stopped her on the roadside. He was the son of a powerful local politician, dressed in designer clothes with dark sunglasses and a flashy smile. He leaned against his father's black SUV and called out to her like she was already his. "Come," he said, "let me take you out. I can give you the life you want." Ifeananya smiled politely, her voice calm and respectful. "Thank you, but no," she said. She didn't shout, didn't insult him, just walked away, her steps quiet but firm. That simple word, no, was like a slap to Obinna. He laughed loudly, but there was no joy in it. He watched her leave with a smirk on his face, but inside, his pride was boiling. Obinna was used to girls begging for his attention. He was powerful, rich, and feared. But this girl dared to say no. And worst of all, she said it without fear. From that moment, something dark sparked inside him. He didn't just feel rejected, he felt challenged. And his ego, swollen and fragile, couldn't take it. Ifeananya didn't know it then, but that quiet refusal would change her life. She had unknowingly wounded a man who believed everyone owed him something. And Obinna, humiliated in silence, began to plot. Not love. Not forgiveness. But revenge. It was a quiet Thursday evening. The sun had already gone down, and the streets of Enugu were beginning to empty. Ifeananya was walking home from law college, carrying her books close to her chest. Her mind was filled with class notes and future dreams. She was only 19, but she walked with purpose. She had always believed that with hard work and faith, she could change her world. She took her usual shortcut, an empty side road behind a row of old shops. She had walked it many times before, never once thinking it could be dangerous. But this night was different. Out of the darkness, two men appeared. Their faces were covered, and their footsteps were fast. Before she could scream, one of them held her down. The other raised a small bottle, and in a split second, the liquid flew through the air. Then came the fire. It wasn't fire from a match, but it burned like hell. Acid. It splashed across her face, her neck, her shoulder. She screamed. A sound so loud and broken it echoed down the empty streets. She fell to the ground, rolling, crying, shaking, her book scattered, her skin burning, her world collapsing. By the time help arrived, the attackers were gone. Vanished. Like shadows. No one saw their faces. No one could describe them. There were no arrests, no witnesses, no justice. Just silence. The hospital became her new home. Every time she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. Her once smooth skin now held deep scars. Her smile, once full of light, now trembled with pain. People came to visit, but their eyes would quickly turn away. Some cried. Some stared. Some simply said nothing. But Ifeananya remembered everything. Every detail. Every scream. Every second that turned her world upside down. She asked herself again and again, why me? She knew it wasn't random. Somewhere deep inside, she felt it, this attack had a purpose. It wasn't a robbery. They didn't take her bag or phone. They only came to destroy. To erase. In the days that followed, she stayed silent. She didn't speak much. She didn't cry loudly. But inside her, something stronger than the pain began to grow. It started small, like a whisper, they tried to end me, but I'm still here. And though her face would never be the same, her spirit refused to die. Everyone around her thought her life was over. That she would hide forever. That she would drop out of school. But Ifeananya was not like everyone else. While the world expected her to disappear, she was silently planning a return that no one would see coming. The days after the attack were long and heavy. Ifeananya stayed indoors, curtains always drawn, mirrors covered, lights off. She lived under layers, blankets, scarves, silence. Her once bright laughter was gone. The only sound now was the ticking clock and the soft hum of the fan. She didn't speak much, didn't look anyone in the eye. Every knock at the door made her flinch. Her face was different now, scarred, raw, painful to touch. But the pain on the outside was nothing compared to the storm building inside her. The girl who once walked with confidence now moved like a shadow. She wore a mask when she had to go outside, but mostly, she just stayed hidden. People whispered. Some pitied her. Others said her life was over. Even some relatives said things like, she was such a pretty girl. What a waste. But they didn't know Ifeananya. One morning, without telling anyone, she dressed up quietly. She wrapped her scarf around her face, picked up her books again, and walked back into law school like she had never left. The halls fell silent when she entered. Some stared. Some looked away. But she didn't stop. She sat in the front row. Eyes straight. Heart burning. Each class became more than a lecture, it became a promise. Each chapter of law, each rule about justice, each case study of right and wrong, it all fed the fire inside her. While others took notes, she took vows. I will not be a victim forever. I will become the courtroom he fears. The system he thinks he owns, I will rise inside it. She no longer cried in the bathroom. Instead, she studied there. She didn't curse her scars anymore. She traced them like battle marks. Pain turned into purpose. In silence, she changed. Not overnight. But slowly, piece by piece. The girl who once hid from the world now stared into her future without blinking. She stopped covering all her scars. Not because they faded. But because she no longer felt shame. The mask became lighter, her voice stronger. Professors noticed. So did classmates. She answered questions with confidence. Her notes were sharp. Her arguments, sharper. Nobody knew her full story. They just saw a girl who had come back from something. A girl who studied like the law owed her something. And every night, when the lights went out and the house grew quiet again, she would lie in bed and whisper to herself, they tried to break me. They thought this would end me. But they only made me stronger. Ifeananya didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted justice. Not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been silenced, scarred, or shamed. And though the world still saw her as the girl who got attacked, she was becoming something else, someone powerful, unstoppable, and fierce. Because her silence was no longer pain. Her silence had become her fury. Years passed. Time moved on, but so did Ifeananya. She finished law school, passed the bar, and slowly built her name as a smart, tough lawyer. People began to respect her, not out of pity, but for her mind, her work, and her quiet strength. Her scars were still there, yes, but now they were part of her power. She didn't hide them anymore. She wore them like a badge of survival. Meanwhile, the world around her began to shake. A big corruption scandal broke out. It was all over the news. Local government officials were exposed, businesses raided, money missing, millions. And right at the center of it all was a name she hadn't heard in years, Obinna. The same Obinna. The one with the flashy smile and dangerous pride. The one who had once offered her the world and turned it to ashes when she said no. He had become even more powerful since their last meeting, but now he was falling, fast. He had been arrested for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. His empire was crumbling. In his panic, Obinna started calling in favors, begging for help from anyone who once praised his name. Doors closed. Phones went silent. People who once worshipped him began to walk away. And then, in one final act of desperation, Obinna sent a message to a lawyer he had heard of, one with a sharp mind and a rising reputation. He didn't know who she really was. He just knew her name, Barrister Ifeanyi Nwosu. When she entered the private meeting room at the detention center, she wore no mask, no scarf. Her face was scarred, proud, and fully visible. Obinna looked up and blinked. At first, he didn't recognize her. But then his eyes widened. His lips parted, but no words came out. He stood slowly, like he'd seen a ghost. Ifeanyi, he asked, barely breathing. She nodded once, calm and cold. Yes, she said. He laughed nervously, trying to act strong. You've done well. I've heard about you. I didn't know it was you, he said. His voice shook. Listen. I need help. They want to destroy me. You know my family. You can't let them fall. Please, Ifeanyi. I need you. He lowered his voice, his pride cracked. You cannot let the family down. For a long moment, she just stared at him. The man who had tried to destroy her now stood broken, begging. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply looked him in the eye and said, "You have no idea who you're standing in front of." He thought she was still that soft girl from Enugu. But she wasn't. Not anymore. And in that room, Obinna finally understood, he wasn't just facing a lawyer. He was facing the very storm he had created. The courthouse in Enugu was packed. Journalists, townspeople, lawyers, everyone was there. Whispers filled the air as they waited for the high-profile fraud trial to begin. At the center of it all was Obinna, the once powerful politician's son, now the accused. He sat at the defense table in a clean suit, but nothing could hide the fear in his eyes. His empire was gone. His allies had turned. He was facing years in prison. Then the courtroom doors opened, and silence fell. Everyone turned. She entered with steady steps, her head held high. No one could miss the scars across her face, but even fewer could miss the strength in her eyes. It was Barrister Ifeanyi Nwosu. The same girl Obinna once mocked. The same girl whose life he had tried to ruin. She walked past him without a glance and took her place at the front, not as a witness, not as a victim, but as the lead prosecutor. The air felt heavier. Cameras clicked. Mouths dropped. She stood tall, wearing her black robe and a calm expression. Then, without warning, she reached up and slowly unwrapped the bandage that covered the left side of her face. Her scars, deep, bold, unforgettable, were now fully visible to the entire courtroom. Gasps echoed around the room. Obinna froze. His hands trembled. Ifeanyi looked directly at the judge, her voice steady and clear. "I once lost my face because of him," she said. "Now I seek justice, with all parts of myself exposed." No one moved. For a moment, time stopped. It wasn't just a legal case anymore. It was history. She presented evidence without emotion but with sharp skill. Bank records. Secret transactions. Hidden properties. Each document was a nail in Obinna's coffin. She questioned witnesses with confidence, pointing out lies, exposing hidden truths. Obinna's lawyer tried to object, tried to shake her. But nothing worked. Ifeanyi was calm like water, sharp like glass. For 3 days, the trial continued. People came just to watch her. Not because of pity, but because they were witnessing something powerful, a woman who rose from ashes to fight in the same world that once tried to bury her. During closing arguments, she walked slowly to the jury. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. "I am not here today because I want revenge," she said softly. "I'm here because justice belongs to everyone. Even those who are scarred. Even those who were silenced." When she finished, no one clapped, no one spoke. The whole courtroom sat in silence, holding its breath. Obinna lowered his head. He didn't speak again. He didn't smile. Because finally, he saw her, not as the girl who said no to him long ago, but as the woman he should have never crossed. And in that courtroom, Ifeananya didn't just win a case. She reclaimed everything they tried to take from her. The courtroom verdict came down like thunder. Obinna was found guilty, on all charges. Fraud. Embezzlement. Corruption. Abuse of power. The judge's voice was calm but firm as he read the sentence, decades in prison. Obinna didn't speak. He couldn't. His lips were dry. His hands shook. He looked around the courtroom as if hoping someone would stand up for him, defend him, pull him out of this nightmare. But no one moved. Not one friend, not one ally, not even family. The empire he once bragged about began to fall apart piece by piece. His luxurious home was sealed. The cars, the companies, the offshore accounts, confiscated. Everything he once called his was now gone. Lawyers searched through his records, finding more and more proof of years of dirty deals and stolen money. People who once toasted to his success now avoided his name like poison. Political sponsors who had once promised him power now denied ever knowing him. He acted alone, they said to the press. We are shocked by his betrayal. Lies, of course, but ones they used to save themselves. Obinna had protected them for years, but when he needed them most, they all vanished. Even his own mother, once so proud of her son, refused to visit him. She sent one message: you have brought shame to this family. Do not contact us again. That message hit harder than the sentence itself. Obinna sat in his prison cell, replaying it over and over in his mind. The prison was nothing like the mansions he was used to. Cold cement walls. Thin mattresses. Harsh guards who didn't care about his last name. He had no special treatment here. He was just another criminal in a jumpsuit. He spent his days staring at the walls, remembering the past. He remembered the parties, the power, the people who bowed when he entered a room. He remembered the girl he thought he had crushed, the one who had said no to him. Ifeananya. Now, she was the one whose name echoed in the newspapers, whose foundation was changing lives, whose face, scarred but strong, was on television screens across the country. She had built something real. Something lasting. And he? He had built an empire made of lies, and watched it burn. There were nights he couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking about that moment in the courtroom. The moment she removed her bandage and stood tall, exposing everything he had tried to destroy. He didn't just lose a case that day. He lost to the very woman he thought would disappear. Now he sat in silence, surrounded by men who didn't know him, in a place that stripped away his pride. There were no more cameras. No more servants. No more power. Just bars. And memories. And as his days dragged on in that small prison cell, he began to realize something deeper and more painful than all the punishment. He didn't just lose his freedom. He lost everything. Years after the trial, Ifeananya had become more than a lawyer. She had become a symbol of courage, survival, and justice. Her story had spread across Nigeria and far beyond. People who had once whispered about her scars now listened to her voice with respect. But Ifeananya didn't stop at winning her case. She wanted to do more, for others who had been hurt, silenced, or forgotten. That's how the Burns of Justice Foundation was born. With the help of doctors, lawyers, and donors, Ifeananya launched a powerful mission, to provide free reconstructive surgery for acid attack survivors and burn victims across West Africa. But it wasn't just about healing bodies. The foundation also gave counseling, legal help, and education to help survivors rebuild their lives, just like she had done. She visited hospitals, hugged women with fresh wounds, listened to stories of pain, and reminded them, "You are not broken. You are not alone." One bright afternoon, at a public event in Lagos, thousands gathered, survivors, supporters, media, and students. Ifeanyi stepped onto the stage. She wore no makeup to hide her scars. No mask. No bandage. Only her truth. The crowd went quiet as she raised the microphone and said, "They wanted to erase me. But only God has that power." She looked over the crowd, her voice strong. "I stand intact." Cheers erupted. People wept. Cameras flashed. And in that moment, Ifeanyi wasn't just a woman who had survived. She was a woman who had turned her scars into strength, and given it to others.